Welcome! Today, we're diving deep into the world of forensic investigation. We're going to explore one of the most complex challenges an investigator can face, figuring out the truth when a death happens in the water.
So this is the question that kicks everything off. A body is discovered, submerged or floating, and right away, you're looking at a silent mystery. Was this just a tragic accident, a desperate suicide, or was it something much, much darker? You see, the water hides a lot of secrets, and it's an investigator's job to make it talk. To even begin to answer that question, you have to start with the science. Before anyone jumps to conclusions, investigators have to rely on the official clinical definition of drowning. It's not just about getting water in the lungs. It's a whole process of respiratory failure. This precise definition, it's the foundation of every single medical-legal case, where medicine and law have to work together to find the answers.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Drowning isn't just one single thing. For an investigator, the first step is to wrap your head around the different ways this can actually happen to the human body.
Okay, so you've got two main types. On one hand, you have wet drowning. This is what most of us picture, right? Water is inhaled, it floods the lungs, and the person suffocates. But then there's dry drowning. In this case, the shock of the water actually causes the vocal cords to spasm and clamp shut, sealing off the airway completely. So no water gets into the lungs, but here's the thing, no air gets in either.
And it doesn't even stop there. You have things like emergent syndrome. That's a sudden heart attack from the shock of hitting cold water. The heart just stops, even before the drowning process can really start. And then there's shallow water drowning, a grim reminder that someone can drown in just a few inches of water if they collapse and can't lift their face. Each of these types leaves its own set of subtle clues for the pathologist to find.
All right, so once we have the types of drowning in mind, the investigation moves to the scene itself. Before the body's even touched, the environment, the water's edge, can tell you the first chapter of the story.
An investigator's eyes are absolutely everywhere. How is the body positioned? Is it face down, which is pretty typical, or is it tangled up? Are there drag marks on the riverbank? What about personal items? Are they folded neatly, maybe suggesting a planned suicide, or are they thrown about like there was a fight? And of course, the biggest red flag of all, are there any ropes or weights? That one detail can flip the entire investigation toward homicide in a heartbeat.
Okay, now we move from the crime scene to the autopsy table. Here, under the bright lights of the examination room, the body itself becomes the most important piece of evidence. The story really starts on the surface of the skin. That fine, foamy froth you might see at the mouth and nose, that's a classic sign. It means the person was trying to breathe against the water. Goose flesh, or cutis anserina, can be a reaction to the cold or just an involuntary thing that happens at the moment of death. Washerwoman's skin on the hands and feet helps figure out how long the body's been in the water. But the crucial question is, are there other injuries, abrasions that point to a struggle? But here's a key tip from the experts. Just because you don't see these signs doesn't mean you can rule out drowning. Now let's look inside. This is one of the most definitive internal signs. It's called emphysema aquosum. See how the lungs are overinflated, almost like balloons? They get spongy and waterlogged. This isn't just water passively flowing in. This happens because the victim was actively, violently inhaling water in their final moments, causing the lungs to stretch out like this.
And that froth we saw on the outside, well, this shows you where it really comes from. It forms deep inside the lungs from a mix of water, air, and mucus during that struggle for breath. And this is huge. In fact, medical-legal experts really emphasize that finding this foam deep inside the airway is powerful proof that the victim was trying to breathe while they were submerged. It proves they were alive when they went into the water. And the evidence just keeps building. Finding things like water, mud, or even weeds in the stomach shows the victim was swallowing while they were struggling. And fluid, unclotted blood in the right side of the heart, that's another major clue. It's caused by water getting absorbed into the bloodstream, which thins out the blood and stops it from clotting. All these internal findings paint a clear picture of a person fighting for their life underwater.
Every investigation is about time. You're trying to figure out what happened in the victim's final moments, but you also need to know what's happened to the body since then.
The timeline is absolutely terrifyingly fast. From the second a person is submerged, they usually lose consciousness within just 2 to 3 minutes. Irreversible brain damage happens only a few minutes after that, and death is usually complete within 5 to 10 minutes. It is a very, very rapid end. Now, here's an interesting practical point. Initially, a body sinks. But later, as decomposition starts, gases build up and will eventually make it float back to the surface.
So, after sinking, when does the body come back up? Well, that almost entirely depends on the water temperature. In warm summer water, the bacteria that cause decomposition work really, really fast. They produce gases that get trapped inside the body and basically act like a built-in life vest. Because of this, a body will usually surface in just 12 to 24 hours.
But in cold, winter water, that whole process gets slowed way, way down. It can take 2 or 3 days, sometimes even longer if it's freezing, for enough gas to build up to bring the body to the surface. So that one factor, water temperature, is absolutely critical for establishing an accurate timeline.
So, we've looked at the scene, we've looked at the body. Now comes the final, most important step, putting all of this information together to figure out the manner of death.
This really lays out the classic patterns you look for. Accidental drownings, well, they often involve kids or boating mishaps, and you won't find suspicious injuries. A suicide might be suggested by belongings left neatly on the bank, maybe a history of depression. But homicide? That has its own distinct signs, evidence of assault, drag marks, and of course, objects used to weigh the body down.
When an investigator starts thinking homicide, they're looking for a very specific set of red flags. Any injuries that don't make sense for a simple fall, like bruises, head trauma, marks around the neck, that's an immediate alert. Signs of a struggle at the water's edge suggest the victim did not go in willingly. And again, if a body has been intentionally weighted down, that's pretty much the most direct evidence of foul play you can get. And the suspicion gets even stronger with other factors. You have to ask, was the victim drugged or really intoxicated? That would make them vulnerable to being pushed. Are there valuables, like a wallet or a phone, missing? That could point to a robbery. And what about witnesses? Do they mention any recent threats or arguments? See, it's rarely just one thing. It's the combination of all these factors that builds a strong case for homicide.
To make sense of all this complexity and to make sure every single piece of evidence will stand up in court, investigators follow a very strict protocol. Every single step, from securing the scene to maintaining a chain of custody for every sample, is all designed to protect the integrity of the investigation. It's how you build a conclusion on a solid foundation of science.
And this really brings us to the core principle of this whole process. There's no such thing as an assumed accident. In the world of forensic investigation, every single body pulled from the water is treated as a potential homicide until it is proven otherwise. The water might try to hide the truth, but a thorough scientific investigation ensures that, in the end, the dead can still tell their story.